How are you? I'm Wolfee. Welcome to Wolfee Talks Fun.
We haven't decided what I am yet, but...
Today we're going to be talking about our definitive ranking for the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. Last week we had the opportunity to watch all of them, all 22. 22 up, 22 down.
Well, I watched like 6 or 7.
I didn't really shower, I didn't really sleep.
Tomatoes everywhere.
So why don't we kick things off with, I think, our agreed upon 22nd film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It has some great moments, but that's the original Thor. I had a tough time getting through it this watch through. The CGI isn't good, the plot is just kind of meandering, there's nothing really going on.
I remember the scene with the beer stein, throwing it on the ground.
That was a coffee.
Was it a coffee? Okay, so...
I remember that, and there's a scene where Thor gets banished to Earth, and he, one of the warriors, I don't know any of their names, but he flipped a table and he went, "Do not mistake my appetite for apathy! Do not mistake my appetite for apathy!"
Yeah. I remember no eyebrows, so Thor doesn't actually stand out in my mind until he got his eyebrows. That's when, like, I started acknowledging, like, oh, like, this is an interesting guy, like, I'm on board.
Number 21, Thor: The Dark World. I hate to give Thor the bottom 2 spots.
It's because he had no eyebrows.
I think where Thor kind of maybe made up for it with some of the cool character moments. Thor: The Dark World had way better CGI, way better set design, but it's just all over the place. The Marvel Cinematic Universe, while it exists in like a heightened reality, this just kind of like says like, fuck it, like we're all over the place. Like, yeah, like Stonehenge, it intersects with this, and Jane Foster has red space goo. Dark elves, what? It kind of seems like a joke. Like if someone was gonna write a joke of a Thor film, it would be like, yeah, the Dark World with dark elves.
Yeah.
Number 20, The Incredible Hulk. I don't even know how we really consider this being in the Marvel Cinematic Universe other than William Hurt, who returns later as General Thunderbolt Ross. Edward Norton is good. Everything is good, but it's kind of like a late 2000s superhero movie.
I remember when we were rewatching it, this was a little while ago, I was like, like, it didn't feel like it belonged in this universe by any means, but it was okay.
This one almost seemed like it wanted to be a dark superhero movie that had lighter moments, but overall it's just so disjointed from the rest of the universe.
Yeah, you really need Mark Ruffalo for that.
Number 19, Doctor Strange. Oh my god, what were they doing? Doctor Strange is so hard to get through.
We've tried, I think I tried twice, fell asleep both times. Don't know if it was just the time of day that we chose to watch it, but it didn't hold my interest. Third time we watched it, just before Endgame came out, I was like, what? But then there were some scenes where I was like, what's happening, but this is fun?
It's like the Willy Wonka tunnel scene where like it's just like trippy for no reason, and then like it kind of settles into like a superhero movie for a while, and then like it just goes like full on acid trip, and they're in Hong Kong or something, and there's a fart cloud that talks. Number 18, Iron Man 2. I think Iron Man 2 gets a lot more flack than it probably deserves, and I hate having it this low. But to follow up on Iron Man, which was so original with this, is kind of a disappointment. But overall, Iron Man 2 just can't really decide what kind of movie it wants to be, and ultimately for that reason, I think it's disappointing.
I agree.
Iron Man 3. Again, I hate to go back to back with the Iron Man films. I don't know that Iron Man 3 has anything necessarily wrong with it. It's just, it doesn't matter in the scope of the rest of the universe.
No, it didn't really have any consequences. It was a film.
Like, Iron Man blows up all the suits at the end of the movie, and then 2 years later, oh, yeah, that didn't happen. Like,
we have suits, it's fine.
Yeah, and Pepper Potts is the hero of the film.
Yoga pants.
Wearing yoga pants at the end of the film, kicking ass, breathing fire out her mouth or something.
Yeah.
Number 16, Captain Marvel. And I don't think that it could be understated how important this was in the grand scheme of things, but as a standalone movie, I just don't know that it works in the way that I want it to.
Felt very underwhelmed by Captain Marvel. I definitely get like lady boners whenever we've got like female power going on, but it just felt so forced. It had to follow Wonder Woman as a standalone like superhero or superwoman movie, and it just kind of fell flat. no idea her name was Carol, so there was like one part of the movie where she just like
My name is Carol.
declares her name as Carol, and I laughed. I'm sorry to all the Carols out there. I mean, good for all the Carols out there. Now they're represented, but
Oh, I'm just a girl.
yeah, it was really uncomfortable.
Number 15, Ant-Man and the Wasp. I think this movie is so funny. I think it brought a lot that was necessary for Avengers Endgame later on.
Knowing now what we know, but I felt, even when we were talking about this marathon that you were getting into, Ant-Man and the Wasp was one of the ones where I was like, nah, just like skim through it, all you need is the post-credit scene, really.
It just feels like lost momentum. Like it's like we have Thor Ragnarok, which is a heavy hitter, and then we had Infinity War, and obviously that set up this big thing, and then we like settle into Ant-Man, and it just kind of feels like, oh, like great, like Paul Rudd is having a heist. 14, Ant-Man. I love this movie. It's so funny. It's so lighthearted and different from Iron Man 2 where it felt like lost momentum. This one felt like a palate cleanser after Age of Ultron, which was too big. Ant-Man was one of those ones where it was just kind of that fresh, small, tight superhero movie that you needed.
But I felt like it was kind of in the same realm. Like it was kind of like a refresher. It was like a different tone. It was fun, and it had some humor in there that I really like relate to, so like yeah, I was happy with that.
Number 13, I don't know that a lot of people would have it this low, but Marvel's The Avengers, the first one.
Just didn't age well.
It doesn't age well. It's so cool to see for the first time all these different characters intersecting and crossing paths, and they brought a lot of cool stuff to it. I think the movie until the third act, where you have that big battle in New York, is just so generic ensemble.
It could be a little bit because you and I were both a little late getting into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I wouldn't say too late, but we were definitely like super hard on DC at the beginning. Rewatching it again, it was just like, yeah, I can see like at the time that would have been something that was like super cool, but now rewatching it, it's just like, yeah.
Seeing the trailer for the Avengers, I was in like a crowded radio booth way back when I was in school, and like there's a Nine Inch Nails song that's playing, and there's Samuel Jackson giving a voiceover, and I'm like, what the hell is this? And that night I went home and I watched all the films that were leading up to it, and it caught my interest for sure, and I think you have to give this movie credit for that at the very least it got you interested in characters that maybe you weren't before.
Yep.
Number 12, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. And originally, before my most recent watch through, I think I had this a lot lower, but there are just so many great things about Volume 2.
I think it started out really strong. It had like the same vibe, that same humor that like I think we all really appreciated from the first Guardians, so that I was super jazzed about.
I think the first hour and a half is so boring, and then I think the last hour just has a ton of heart and so much about family and your parents and where you come from and the friends that you choose, the family that you choose. That stuff really hit home for me, and that's what kind of bumped it up on my list. Number 11, Age of Ultron. And again, this is one, I think it gets a lot more flack than it deserves. But to follow up kind of that hype from those Phase 2 films, and even from the first Avengers at the time, this was a disappointment, I think, for a lot of fans.
Noticeable, though, the tone shift once we got the Avengers back together again. Like, comparing it to the first Avengers movie, like, definitely got a lot more serious, I would say, like, darker almost, and like, I felt like that was one thing that really stood out when I first saw this.
Well, for me, I think you're right. Like, it's a lot darker shot. I think that in everything, the production value went way up. There's a lot of robots. There's a lot of flying cities. There's some cool Hawkeye stuff, I guess. But overall, other than expanding the roster of heroes and maybe setting up Civil War, I don't know that it added enough to the film to really be a beloved franchise.
Really bad accent from Elizabeth Olsen. That's the one thing that stands out for me. It's okay though, it disappears throughout the series. We don't care about it.
I like that barn. Number 10, Black Panther. This film is again so important to the grander scope of things. It did so much world building. And gotta love both of the villains in this film with Andy Serkis and Michael B. Jordan.
I really loved, like, probably the majority of the movie. I think I got lost within the last, like, 45 minutes or so. I felt like it became a little bit of a CGI mess at some points, which really took away from, like, what they had built up throughout the entire beginning of the movie.
Rhinoceroses, and there's, like, a civil war that gets wrapped up for no reason, and I don't know why they killed off Andy Serkis. I love that guy. 9, Spider-Man Homecoming. What a delight this film is. It's a coming-of-age story. It feels like Superbad meets Spider-Man.
Yeah.
It's unlike the Raimi films. It's definitely unlike the Andrew Garfield films. There's just something so lovable about Spider-Man Homecoming.
I really enjoyed it. I actually enjoyed it more the second, third time I saw it.
Michael Keaton is cool.
Michael Keaton is cool. Michael Keaton's always cool.
And I love the return of Happy Hogan. And Jon Favreau obviously directed the first 2 Iron Man films.
Yes.
We didn't see him for a bit, but it's just so great to see him
Love
back.
that he's back again.
He just like grounds everything that happens.
I thought that was a really good, lighthearted film to kind of throw in the middle of what has been going on, and to set up that relationship between Peter and Tony. I feel like we later on see like that was pretty key.
Number 8, I hate having it this low, but it is a shared ranking. The first Iron Man film kicked off this universe, and it just really made you feel like Iron Man was someone that anyone could become if you worked hard.
Unfortunately, and I know I'd probably get flack for this, but not the biggest Iron Man fan. Total respect for Iron Man and Tony Stark, but he's not in my top. And while the film I did enjoy, for some reason it doesn't stick with me. I don't remember it far after, which was, in the beginning, my biggest thing with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I found that a lot of times the movies were becoming too forgettable for me. And unfortunately, I found that this movie kind of got intertwined into that.
The last half hour really is just kind of like a CGI mess, and you've got, you know, the villain of the film just
We
kind
really
of
don't like when there's a CGI mess.
yelling random evil catchphrases, but just that first hour and a half of the film is so enjoyable, and Tony Stark is just so infectiously awesome. Like, you just, like, he can be doing anything, and like you're rooting for him. Number 7, Captain America: Civil War. I think that's where this list really hits another level. I think that's when the rest of the movies are ones that we really like.
Yeah. So we'll get a little more excited during this part of the video.
Civil War is so good, and I didn't give it the credit that it deserved for a long time, because I think people tried to pit it against Batman v Superman. They're totally different movies with different intentions. Civil War does something I don't know that we've seen before, and it takes 2 beloved characters like these and really puts them at odds.
Yeah, and I think that's when it really got the audience thinking, like, all right, like, do I identify with Captain America in this situation or Iron Man in this situation? At least it did for us. Like, it really does make you think, like, well, you know what? Steve's got some good points here, man.
Like, leading up to it, I was always like, oh, Captain America, and like, you know, like, I like all those heroes better. I like the Winter Soldier, I like the Falcon, I like Hawkeye, but I can't help but feel like Steve made a mess of things when he didn't necessarily need to. Like, there were times that I thought, honestly, he was kind of selfish.
That you could say the same thing for Iron Man, too.
Well, Iron Man is like a manipulator in this film. Like, I love, there's a line, like, Peter says, it's with great responsibility comes great power line, but he says it differently. He's like, when you have the power to do things and you don't do them, then that's on you. That's your fault. And that's exactly Captain America's point. That's exactly why Captain America is against the Sokovia Accords. And I think Tony hears that out of Peter, and he's like, oh shit, like, he's not really on my side. But he's a kid, and he manipulates him into doing what he wants, because that's kind of what Tony does. He wanted to keep the team together in the event of something like the threat of Thanos coming.
Right. I guess. Okay.
Number 6, Captain America, the First Avenger.
This is only this high because I ranked it pretty high.
I had it actually probably outside my top 10. It's a really fun film. I think the first hour or so works better than the rest of the film. I would have liked to have seen more World War II stuff, and I don't know. To me, it's just like an old timey romp, Saki and the Kisser type of film. Like it just doesn't work.
I think that's why I like it, because I kind of like the cheese sometimes. I like a little. I love cheese. But this was like the good type of cheese. Like it's just, it feels so wholesome, and like it just really brings together like Captain America, and like makes you fall for him, and like really like you start to invest part of your soul into his character, and it really takes you throughout the entire series. So I'm keeping it there. I stand where I stand.
You know, I do think it does a really good job of laying the groundwork for that relationship between him and Bucky. Obviously,
Peggy.
And that huge payoff with Peggy later on. So this movie is a good one. For me, it belongs a little bit lower, but I totally understand why you've got it this high. Number 5, Avengers Endgame. What a blast. Spoilers. Wow. Avengers Endgame, holy shit, is a big movie.
Like you said, it's got some girth, let me tell you.
Like, this film could not get any bigger. I thought with Avengers Infinity War, like, well, holy shit, this is a big movie. But like, this is a fucking huge movie.
There was definitely a lot to digest.
I don't know how they made Thor: The Dark World seem like a really key part of this
I feel
timeline,
like they kind of brought that back in to then
be like, fuck you gotta watch it.
Yeah.
And then that sacrifice from Tony, I mean, even you who you're not an Iron Man fan.
Yeah.
I mean, that's such a...
I cried twice in this movie. But yeah, did cry for that. It did, like, I felt that it did bring a lot of emotion, and it did really hit. This was also this was the only movie where I've ever experienced that much audience participation. Like, we...
grown men crying, there was grown men cheering.
There was a very large man crying beside me. Like, nothing's wrong with that, but it goes to show you, like, there was just so much emotion in that theater. He stood up, I think, at one point.
I did this weird, like...
I sat up all night, like, thinking about Black Widow was gone, like, and I didn't have time to mourn. Like, I don't know.
And then obviously the biggest moment was Captain America finally getting his happy ending. I mean, it's such a nice kind of like reversal of what we've seen so far. Like, Cap's always been the one talking about the sacrifice play, and Tony's been the selfish one. Well, now Tony makes a sacrifice play, and Cap finally gets his selfish moment to be with Peggy, and in an alternate timeline, and he gets to travel back and give Sam the shield. But it's just so emotional that he got to do that, and really nice.
That was the second time I cried.
Number 4, Thor Ragnarok, and holy fuck, Thor Ragnarok is awesome. Like, I almost had it at my number 1.
Thor Ragnarok was an experience.
Right. Like, the first half hour, before you kind of get into it, like, seems a little silly, and you're like, what? Like, what's going on? And then, like, it goes full Jeff Goldblum.
Yep.
And, like, it's the funniest we've seen Thor.
Zeppelin.
Yeah, like...
That's what these movies have been missing.
Is Led Zeppelin.
You need more Zeppelin.
This movie's so metal. Like,
it is.
Even, like, with, like, the dragon at the beginning, and it's flying through, like, hell, and, like there's a giant wolf.
I really loved Valkyrie too. I really loved the introduction to her character. I hope we get to see more of her, like, through the next phase of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like, I thought I could personally identify with her. I'm not as badass, but, like, it definitely, I do like to indulge in the beer.
Number 3, Guardians of the Galaxy. I know you had this one number 1. I had a little bit lower, but it's still really, really enjoyable. I think I liked it better when it came out than I do now. But
I know that seeing, like, the movie trailers for it, I was like, oh, okay, like, this looks different. Like, and it was definitely different from all the other films that had come out up until that point. And I just remember, like, it probably helped that I went in with no expectations. It was just another, like, Thursday night, we're going to see this movie, whatever. And, like, the opening scene, like the soundtrack, which I'm sure everybody always talks about that, but like I'm always on board when you have classic rock in there, and it just felt so like relatable, like because we had some human characters there, and I mean, like Chris Pratt, like he's pretty great too. Like I'm so glad to get him on board there. Space Pants.
Number 2, Avengers: Infinity War. I love this movie. It's so good. It could have been bad. Like it could have been horrible. And somehow they made it work. Like they made every character in this movie relevant. They gave every character their moment. And after Thor Ragnarok, like no, Thor was no one's favorite Avenger. Thor was like, oh, like yeah, cool, like a Norse guy.
Thor was definitely one of my favorite Avengers after Ragnarok,
right? Like
especially going into Infinity War.
Like he was just so badass. They took him to another level with that moment where he shows up in Wakanda and big Thanos.
There was a lot of dark, emotional. Well, the first opening scene.
Yeah, that's the best scene in all of the Marvel films.
Really, like, set the tone, like, really, like, made you aware, like, okay, like, shit's going down.
If you brought a 3-year-old...
It's not gonna be good. Yeah, I felt like there was a lot of different storylines they were going through, but it never at any point felt like one was dragging more than the other, and I felt like it all came together, like...
That brings us to number 1, Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Marvel's never done a more complete film. They've never done one that just felt so good, so consistent from start to finish. Captain America got taken from one level to the next. That opening scene on the Lumerian Star, the boat, where he's kicking guys off and he's stabbing guys with knives, and it's like, holy shit, I can't believe Captain America's doing this, but it did it in a way that just felt so natural, and they really took Captain America from like he's that wholesome Avenger that like everybody likes to like fuck, like Captain America's a badass. He is my favorite Avenger. Black Widow is in this film, and she kind of starts off as like super spy, and like, you know, in Iron Man 2 and in the Avengers, like, you know, she's a good guy, she's working for S.H.I.E.L.D., but like, you're never really sure what her true intentions are, and I think in this one you really see an evolution for her. Like, you really see her start to become a superhero. I think my bias leans towards DC, and part of that is because you get these cool fight scenes with Batman and Robin and whoever else, but
we really like the brutality.
Right, and that's exactly what this movie was. This movie was brutal while still staying within that tone of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It was really impressive. So that's it. That is our 22 film ranking of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I can't believe we're here. End of the Infinity Saga. We have a definitive start, a definitive end now. Captain America and Tony are obviously the highlights of these films, but Thor provides another dynamic that you know, to see his arc over the films too is really impressive, and then you've got your other supporting Avengers who just made the ride even more enjoyable. That's it. That's all for our ranking. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Wolfee.
I'm here.
And this has been Wolfee Talks Fun.